Welcome to Sunday night. My name is Kwaku Sakyi Addo, and you're listening to Asase Radio 99.5. I'm here at Vume Tefle, a twin village in the Volta region known for its beautiful pottery. I'm here to have a conversation with J.J Rawlings, Ghana's head of state for almost 20 years. He came to prominence in mid-1979 at age 32, when he and other officers toppled the military regime of General F.W.K. Akufo in a bloody revolt. He handed over to President Hila Liman after 3 months, but returned to power on the last day of 1981 and stayed for 19 years, the last 8 of those as an elected president of a multi-party democracy. It's been 20 years since he handed over power in the first peaceful transition from one political party to the other in Ghana, and one of the first in Africa. Mr. Rawlings turned 73 just a few days ago. Today, he sports a full head of white hair with a matching beard and a substantial girth, nothing like the lanky Air Force officer who hung in his overalls as though they were not occupied. What are his memories, the reminiscences of his life, the good, the brilliant, the bad, and the ugly? Mr. President, thank you for inviting me to your riverside home at Vume. It's a beautiful place.
Indeed it is. I love it.
But your hair, is this because of coronavirus? Are you avoiding your barber?
That's it, you know. I wanted to provide evidence that I was also hibernating. And I've decided until it goes, this hair won't go. But as soon as it goes, yes. Until then, I was telling 1 or 2 people that the president can use his bald head to knock out the coronavirus, and I'll use Moses' brush to brush them away.
Tell me about this place where we are.
Yeah. I heard you saying Vume. You also say Vume, but actually it's meant to be a Twi word, Humi. And I think Humi is like taking a breath or something.
Breathing.
Breathing. One of the chiefs of this Humu place used to be called Banaini, the late chief. Yeah, so that's an Akan name for you. I think some of them settled here. I don't know how long ago. But I became familiar with this place through my wife, who had a few friends here about 40 years ago. Nice, beautiful place. It's always been. I just took to this place.
Right.
Yes.
Nature falls, you've got peacocks, you've got pigeons,
Them all.
dogs, cats. You obviously love nature. Lots of trees.
No. I'm very much attached to nature. That's why I refused to cut down a lot of the trees when we had to rebuild this place. This one, for instance, used to be a wooden shed, but it rotted away when I couldn't make time to frequent the place. And we've had to rebuild it. I was saying earlier, we built this place actually for Mandela.
Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela. That's why we call it the Mandela Cottage. Because he kept insisting he would like to stay with us. And a Jaringano place wasn't ready, and Ridge wasn't suitable enough for him.
Jaringano is your private home in Accra.
That's it. We're still working on it at the time. And of course, whenever we would meet, you'd be asking, is the place ready? Is the place ready? Because I kept on saying it wasn't ready yet. Anyway, I haven't decided to build this place because I realized he was quite serious about coming to live with us. we decided to build this place, but it cost us an arm and a leg to actually build the pool as well. You know, because the density of bilharzia here is so high. And when we used to come here many years ago, we used to swim in the river, actually. But we didn't want the old man to come suffer from this bilharzia. That's why we had to build a pool for him as well. But of course, by the time we were ready, he was taken ill and hospitalized and then stayed at home, couldn't really move. Talking about the bilharzia density here, when we move on to the river, I'll show you a little island over here. That wasn't here about 30 years ago. Yeah, 30 and more years ago. It was created by the river, actually. So in so doing, it has dammed, 30% of the river. And once that happens, it slows down the flow. Then you have the growth of the weeds and the malaria, those parasites, correct. We try to get VRA to clean it up, get rid of it, but they could only do so much, really.
How often do you come here?
I would love to live here. I used to come here quite often. In those days, it would take about 45, 50 minutes to drive here. But with the passage of time, too many vehicles, irresponsible driving, has led to the creation of so many. Somebody would call them speed ramps. I don't. Obstacles, Some of them have become so dangerous. I wish the government would actually warn the assemblies to desist from this sort of, because they become so dangerous. Some of them have actually been responsible for accidents. Not only that, but they can weaken, shock absorbers and springs and things like that. Build the speed ramps if they're necessary, because of the speed ramps, not obstacles. And they should be done according to the measurements, But I think people just take the initiative and do whatever they want. And it's just not right. So, in effect, instead of 50 minutes, now it takes about 1 hour 15, 1 hour 30 minutes. And with the buildup of traffic, yes.
It's been 20 years since you left office. Do you miss being president?
Criticize and expose this man once in a while, and that appears to be earning him public sympathy, then I don't see why I should be criticizing people who have committed less offenses. We will go into the details.
All right. Let's come back to your time as president.
Okay.
What does it take to be president of a country for almost 20 years? What are what characteristics, qualities must a man or woman have to run a country for that long? Surely it mustn't be easy.
No, it wasn't. But you'll have to bear with me. I have a bit of a problem, and it affects my speech because of my heartbeat.
Okay.
But I guess it depends also on your leadership style. We were not sitting on a throne. We were part of the actors and the engineers on the ground with the people. My wife was not sitting at the castle drinking tea. She was in the villages around the country. She was sleeping in very rough places. And we had no choice, really, but to get involved with the people. And that was tiresome. That was tiring. Besides, you've got to understand that our leadership was more or less related to what I would like to describe as being compassionate. Your respect for the people. I'll come to it again. However, there are those who lead using the medium of fear, the fear factor. And people who use the medium of fear factor are able to relax and, and orders are obeyed because people are afraid of the government, of them. But knowing very well that my intervention drove away a lot of that fear factor, there was nothing you could do besides I resented the use of the fear factor.
But do you know there were people who are afraid of you, though?
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. I was one of the first people to actually criticize the atmosphere when I said the culture of silence. Yes. And it happened. What provoked it was that a canoe, a little boat, collecting people, crossing from one end of Lake Bosumtwi to the other, I think sank and the people died or something. Meanwhile, prior to that happening, I think the passengers must have recognized that the pilot was drunk. But nobody would talk. It's pretty much like people joining, passenger vehicles. You're only supposed to take 5, but they load them up, and they are squeezed in there, and nobody dares to talk. So just between the driver and the mate alone, they literally terrorize everybody into silence. Nobody dares to talk. What's even annoying is sometimes when we see the way they're driving, it's going to cost you lives. But nobody dares to talk. And I don't think this is healthy. However, let's talk about the 20 years in office.
Yes. So
I'm saying that it was a very tiring business because you were not enjoying the luxury of just giving orders. You had to be on the ground, have the time to lead things.
Especially the PNDC years.
Yes, very much so. Okay, let me make a difference between that. But there again, having been identified with that leadership style, I sort of had to continue anyway. And mind you, when I'm taking on subjects persistently, like family planning, and explain it was a subject I always spoke about. Somebody like Kufo, no, because a lack of family planning virtually undermines your development program. You're creating starvation for yourself of resources, etc. So that when I am even during the campaign period, advocating for family planning, and in the next corner, there's another politician saying, Muba. That's what's his name? For you? Ow. I'm wondering what the hell's wrong with this guy?
I don't, to be fair, I don't recall Kufo saying people should have children.
They should go and look into the archives. I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true.
So, so you are passionate. So that's something you are very passionate about.
Yes.
But again, during the military years, the PNDC years, there's no parliament. Essentially, what you say or want to happen, you can do. Was it easier to run the country during the PNDC years than when we had a multi-party democracy?
It was easier in one respect. The level of integrity, accountability, etc., came naturally. Not from me, from all of us. It was something I think humanity, our people yearn for, because it gives you peace of mind. And I think it was something we'd been craving for a long time. So that one day, I'm going to have to tell this country that when we had to go multi-party, the truth was that the people didn't want it.
Did you want it?
No, I don't want it. No.
You still don't?
No, look at what it does. The division, the animosity, etc. People take advantage of whatever. We'll come to that also in other details. But get me back on the subject. Where were we?
I was asking about whether it's easier to run a country, whether it was easier like here in DC because there's no parliament,
Like I said,
no opposition.
it was easier in one respect.
Yes.
Because things came naturally. It was like natural justice was at work. You didn't have to look back at what a law says. People were living themselves. It was a beautiful time. Now, Chief, the beautiful period. And I think you were trying to approach an issue of didn't you have an easy time because you could have been dictatorial or some way because you had no opposition, etc.
Exactly.
Chief, I'm a very consultative person by nature. On top of that, how much do I know to think I can inflict solutions on people? No. Besides, I've always believed in the beauty, the great resilience and intelligence of the Ghanaian, provided you can create a platform for them to come out with their best. And I think this is something we did with the PNDC. This is something I will always take credit for. That you create an atmosphere that brings the best out of people. When you've got characters like the PVs, the Justice, the billion people in a society.
Justice.
Correct. I do recollect that even at PNDC meetings, I hardly ever chaired any meeting. Not when we have justice, because I don't want people to feel, my colleagues of the cabinet, to feel I'm being obstructive. Or I'm adopting a style which might make it difficult for them to say what's on their mind. So I sit in on the meeting just like any one of them. And Justice Annan conducts it. When he's not available, it can be PV. He's not available, Idris Mahama, etc. You know? Even later on when we entered constitutional rule, what do you call it? Professor Mills was the one who used to conduct affairs over there. So I'm saying that I don't have a monopoly of what is right or wrong, you know, and that is something I like about the beautiful ones are not yet born. The guy, right? Are you aware, you know? But the point, I do disagree with him in one respect. The beautiful ones are there, have been born. It's just that they are never given the platform or the space to function.
They're wearing masks.
The policy, maybe so, but the politics, you know, as we've known in this country, literally makes it impossible and difficult for people like that to give up their best, you know. So for me, it wasn't going to be a difficult exercise at all if I ever stepped in, because I know they're there.
You're listening to Sunday Night on Asasi Radio 99.5. I'm Kwaku Sakyi Addo, and it's my honor to have former President Rawlings as my guest. We'll be back shortly.
Pan-African is who we are. Accuracy is how we represent. Integrity is what we believe in. Constructive journalism is the tone of our profession. And we speak as the voice of our land. So when the drums of creativity sound and the gongs clang, when vegetations thrive and the people rise, high above the voice of doubt, the voice of despair, and the voice of impossibility, we trust that deep within, the people know to respond to a call of duty, to society and country, the voice of equality and transformation, the voice of our Asasi, the voice of our land. Hear it, hit to it, walk with it. Asasi Radio 99.5, the voice of our land.
Welcome back. This is Sunday Night on Asasi Radio 99.5, and my guest is former President J.J Rawlings. It was difficult in those days, though, for people who had opposing views to your government, to your policies, to say so openly, like we can do today, like we can do in a multi-party democracy? What do you think?
You know, as far as the interchange of views, even within Parliament, it was as good as what you find in the chief's compound or the chief's palace, where the chief is probably the last to interview. Until then, everybody says how they feel about an issue. No, it was, but that was very much a natural way too.
But of course,
Yes.
there were people who went to prison, who were not tried because they, criticized you. Several people, Kwesi Pratt, Kwaku Bako, Akuto Ampao, and so on and so forth, who had a different view from yours in those years.
Maybe.
Was that a mistake?
Oh, no. I'm in a position.
Were you not aware?
No. I am in a position to recognize very much so when we're getting close to the tip of the precipice. Some of these so-called intellectuals don't have it. They don't seem to recognize when saying this or that could provoke a situation and we'll be starting all over again. So sometimes I had to do what I had to do in order to contain and preempt that kind of situation. Yeah. It's unfortunate because some of them were pretty sharp characters. You know something? I remember telling some of those, one or two of those characters you just mentioned, plus a few others from Legon, to hurry up and go and bring the Legon students into the camp to be taken through military training. They couldn't, they didn't. Till the moment passed and we lost the chance. Because those who also hold the gun, while you have your classroom, your intellectual, whatever it is, your mouth, they also have this and don't want to part with it. However, when the situation was becoming threatening, both from inside and from without, Western powers, etc., at that moment, they would share. They didn't want the monopoly of the gun anymore. They would share it so that we can defend the nation. And you take advantage of that situation. But no, they didn't seem to realize what was on the ground, that the atmosphere for right to take away, to democratize, the use of violence, if I'll put it that way, so that we neutralize each other. They let it pass. I don't know, one more tease something, some of these things that's here. They don't seem to have an emotional insight into the underdog, into some people. Well, yes, they're buried in their, whatever it is, their so-called intellectual masturbation, as somebody else put it. There's a role for them. And I respect them. I mean, who do you think I consult anyway? It's them. But somewhere along the line, they don't seem to realize that, sorry, don't go that far. Don't go this far. You will provoke something.
A lot of people died in the PNDC years. Some were executed, including your friend, Kojo.
Yes. Yeah. Including my own brother's son.
Yeah. So we're asking about what it takes to run a country for 20 years. I mean,
those days, it was important to also recognize that the kind of justice that waits. When they say justice delayed is justice denied or something like that, was very true in those days because the temperature was hot. And if they considered it as being unjust, you have a problem on your hands. I mean, there's my brother's son. Actually collects a gun, you see what I mean, and shoots somebody in the face or in the head in utter cold blood. Ends up with the tribunal. And the man is set free. He's set scot-free. Wait, Charlie, what's going on now? Do you know how people are going to interpret it? You know?
But that is not an easy decision for you to sign that death warrant, is it?
Some, but not all. I mean, some of the obvious ones to do with, you know, robbery and killing, etc. Well, I don't hesitate with that. But at the same time, there are times when I feel that I'm going to execute a saint because of the possibility of the probability of regrets they'd be going through before they die, you know, and I would wish I could let them off. But if I do, there'll be a perpetuation of whatever caused it.
Example?
Oh, okay. A couple of armed robbers that I knew about, you know. But it was recently, for instance, that a friend was telling me how he went to, a squadron mate to visit Larry, and he had turned so religious.
Which Larry Beverly? No.
Yeah, in the prison.
Okay.
You know. Of course, I did know it then, but not that it would have stopped me. But a few too many people had been shot in cold blood by my brother Larry.
Your brother? Okay.
My friend.
Yeah.
Larry, my squadron mate.
Right, like, yeah.
And I
Could you?
really, you know, it would be difficult to allow it. And I remember even when it was done, a lot of people thought, no, I've helped him to scoot to leave the country, you know?
Yeah, people didn't believe that he was executed.
There was another gentleman who just kept killing people for ritual purposes in his village. You can probably go and ask this Victor Smith whether that fine big head of his, you know, whether that murderer was not planning as he was giving him a thought to eat. Well, at that time, he didn't know that he was such a murderous character. A man like that, for instance, when the law caught up with him, I think was the only one who was not executed in Accra. We had to execute him in his village because they wouldn't believe that he's been, and he had terrorized the villagers. Were so frightened of him, you know, because of his killings. We had no choice but to do what was done, you know. So we have some pretty good cases, you know, that didn't call for mercy, you know.
Let's come to
Take a look at the murder of the judges, for instance. No. If there's one thing I feel pretty sad about, you know, is that Amatekwe had to be saddled with it all. I believe somebody in uniform must have given, you know, that order to the soldiers to do what they did, because they wouldn't have obeyed Amatekwe's orders to do that as a civilian.
But you signed his death warrant.
Oh, yes. I mean, that is not to say that he didn't deserve to die. Okay? According to the investigations and the trial.
The SID report.
Correct. But I'm just saying that somebody else.
So you believe
Yes.
that someone or some people may have been or borne some of the responsibility or the primary responsibility for the murder of the judges, but who got away?
Who have gotten away and are still making a lot of noise. That's the trouble with this law of ours. When I keep insisting we should use the chemical interrogation, and some people like to make fun of it, about swallowing frogs, etc. About Kwaku, you know.
Your friend used to be police.
From a distance. You know, he, for instance, when he was appearing before Kufuor's commission, went and told a weird story about one Goka, one of the coup plotters, you know, who was tortured. I won't go into details about what he claimed, but nobody did any such thing. And professional soldiers don't do things like that, actually. And I think he had wanted to invite Ben Ebsen to join him to put out that story. And I think Ben Ebsen refused to be part of it. I think because he knew this kind of makeup wasn't good enough, you know, just to poison the atmosphere against us.
Would you like to meet up with him, with some of these people? Your old friends, your Kwaku, Ben Ebsen, some of you.
A lot of damage. You know, are they prepared to undo some of the damage? A chap like, what's his name? Sakyi Addo. A really nice, good friend of mine in the past. You know, once wrote something nasty, ugly about me when he came back into the country, that I had, in the early days, I don't know whether it was the PNDC, I think the PNDC time, I'm supposed to have mixed cement with water, no, cement powder, and thrown it down somebody's throat and poured water after it. I didn't see it, I hadn't read it. It was a very important lady in the journalistic profession who called me, said, read that thing. I was truly sad that he would make up such a vicious story against me. So I was contemplating actually sending that story. I thought, would he write this if it weren't true? But I'm sure he must have known that I was doing everything possible to contain things like that. And I will never do something like this. And yet you have to put this on me. I was contemplating sending this thing to Parliament because I thought about it and thought, amongst them, somebody was crazy enough, wielding power in those days, who could do something like this? But somehow one never got around to it. But it's something I would still like to serve out there, for somebody to investigate who suffered that kind of thing, if it did really happen. So when they can do things of this nature, you think I can just get up and sit with them? No. They've done a lot of damage.
So there are a lot of people that you set out with. June 4, December 31st, many of, some officers, some civilians, many of whom you have fallen out with.
Yes.
Even including the NDC years.
Yes.
Are they all wrong and you right?
I wish I could say yes. But you're fair to put it that way. But, Chief, power invariably has a way of corrupting people. And I'm very much on the lookout for things like that.
Did it corrupt you?
No. Never did. And maybe this is the benefit, the advantage I have, that I was not as vulnerable as the average person or most of our people are You know, PV was one such person too, for instance. PV Obeng, who held who stayed intact in terms of avoiding being corrupted by.
He was like your de facto prime minister.
He was. That man was just brilliant. Truly brilliant.
You're listening to Sunday Night on Asasi Radio 99.5. I'm Kwaku Sakyi Addo, and it's my honor to have former President J.J Rawlings as my guest. We'll be back shortly.
Pan-African is who we are. Accuracy is how we represent. Integrity is what we believe in. Constructive journalism is the tone of our profession. And we speak as the voice of our land. So when the drums of creativity sound and the gongs clang, when vegetations thrive and the people rise, high above the voice of doubt, the voice of despair, and the voice of impossibility, we trust that deep within, the people know to respond to a call of duty, to society and country, the voice of equality and transformation, the voice of our assassin, the voice of our land. Hear it, hit to it, walk with it. Assassin Radio 99.5, the voice of our land.
Welcome back. This is Sunday Night on Asasi Radio 99.5, and my guest is former President J.J Rawlings.
You know,
Let me take you to 1970, late 78 and 79. The first time those who were not in the military, civilians, got to know of a J.J Rawlings was when you were escorting General Akufu when he was traveling, I believe, to Senegal. That was the first time anyone saw you in the media. You were in the newspaper, working with him in your sunglasses. And in a matter of months, we had May 15th, the attempted overthrow, then subsequently June 4th. What pulled the trigger for you that enough is enough? When did that, can you recall the moment when you said enough? Or was it a build-up?
it was a build-up, and that had actually happened a long time ago. We had been attempting, and mind you, I was in no position, and I must repeat this over and over and over, to pull off a coup d'etat, lead troops to do this or that. The most we could have done would have been to probably capture Chambon and some of his people, and, you know, urge, what's his name, Akufo to take over. I was in touch with Akufo as well, as one of the things. That was the time when I was supposed to have dropped a bomb on
Chambon's residence.
We were making efforts, attempts to do it. Finally, we thought we could do it on a certain day. On that day, Chambon was put on they did a Paris coup against it. And I recall that a handful of soldiers were coming into the station from 6 onwards in preparation for what we had to do that night. And I remember being on the station, waiting for them, and dismissing all of them. It wasn't easy because, as I was saying, persistently, any time we had to move something, obstructive or something would go wrong, we'll have to put it up, And the anger of the troops, of the nation, was also building up. Now, why do you think they had difficulties? For the reason that I just stated. So I had to convince them that if you and I made a move tonight, when Chambon was removed today, this morning, we would be crushed like flies by our own troops because we think we're fighting for him and trying to reinstate him. Then it clicked. And with ease, they sort of left. So even following that, let me tell you something interesting. On another occasion, I was to fly into the country from Peshawar, no, from Karachi. Yes.
You had gone on a course.
Correct. And I was coming back for us to make the move. It had to be postponed because the airport had been closed. Why was the airport closed? Because a Champong's regime was allowing the shipment, the air shipment of arms and ammunition to Ian Smith. Just imagine. Ian Smith.
In Rhodesia.
Our airport and license, for a few days and nights. So I thought about probably coming in through Cote d'Ivoire. And in fact, around that period, some of the soldiers and warrant officers from the Recce regiment had also been arrested. They were released in less than 2-3 days. Because the tension was so high, they wouldn't dare arrest and keep people for that long. Do you understand what I'm saying? When the most obvious, that should be happening. And people appear to be taking steps towards and you arrest them. It might backfire. But fortunately, it had very little to do with me. But I'm trying to make you understand. And mind you, what do you think I was trying to do? I keep saying that the atmosphere was so charged. All it required was just one man, a dozen people to strike the match and throw it into the charged air, the gassed up air, And he would do his own job. You can go to sleep. 15 May, finally, that's what one was going to do. But I said, too many innocent people.
So what went wrong on May 15th?
Nothing went wrong. All I did was to ask the boys to take a rest for 2-3 hours because we were ready by midnight. And if we had started, it was so deep. When people are feeling angry to that extent, darkness is the favorite time. So, not light. And if we had started in the darkness of midnight, Chief, it wouldn't have been good at all. So it was too early. So I had to tell them, take a rest. And I also lay on the ground in the bush. And we didn't start until close to 3 o'clock. So that by the time we arrested the armored cars and did this and did that and dislocated this, because I had decided that I'm not going to go through with the ignition because, like I said, people would die. It was not necessary. We didn't have to do it. So I decided maybe we will rather capture some of the senior officers and senior elements, yes, and demand a Durbar, with the senior officers. Mm-hmm.
And then you got arrested.
Yeah, unfortunately, there again, as daylight was hitting us, a couple of them started to escape, you see what I mean? Because this is not what anybody banked on. And they didn't know that I was going to do what I was doing. And my reason for it, I just didn't want to see blood spilled. It was not necessary. So I was more prepared to face arrest, to lose, than to make others lose and lose their lives. Yeah, that is what went wrong with 15 May. And yet, the very thing I was doing to prevent the explosion is exactly what happened June 4. Fortunately, my voice had been heard, so I was able to, help to cool them down when June 4th happened.
You're listening to Sunday Night on Asasi Radio 99.5. I'm Kwaku Sakyi Addo, and it's my honor to have former President J.J Rawlings as my guest. We'll be back shortly.
Pan-African is who we are. Accuracy is how we represent. Integrity is what we believe in. Constructive journalism is the tone of our profession, and we speak as the voice of our land. So when the drums of creativity sound and the gongs clang, when vegetations thrive and the people rise, high above the voice of doubt, the voice of despair, and the voice of impossibility, we trust that deep within, the people know to respond to a call of duty, to society and country, the voice of equality and transformation, the voice of our assassin, the voice of our land. Hear it, hit to it, walk with it. Assassin Radio 99.5, the voice of our land.
Welcome back. This is Sunday night on Assassin Radio 99.5, and my guest is former President J.J Rawlings. So, May 15th, you were arrested. Do you think you would, as your trial was ongoing, what did you think would happen? Were you not afraid of being convicted and getting maybe executed?
Yeah.
You were a young man, 32 years old.
I know, but when you see some of the things that we were seeing in this country, and I don't think I was the only one, the kind of suffering and humiliation and the filth, you lose the fear of dying. You don't care for death anymore.
Were you tortured
No.
You weren't.
No.
You had a bandage on your hand.
I
What
did.
was that?
And that was because I was trying to dodge a bullet. Nobody dodges bullets. You can ask me about that one too. And I'm not lying, I'm not exaggerating. Intuition. That was the third time I obeyed my intuition and leapt. Yes.
To dodge a
in the
bullet.
vehicle. Yeah, and nobody was firing. I think they wisely chose me as the only target so that they probably wouldn't have to shoot and kill other soldiers who were with me on the vehicle. And that split, the silence was deafening. The silence was uncomfortable. So in that split second, it's like you obey a voice within. And in somersaulting on top of the vehicle, that's when I heard the bullet slammed underneath me, which was into the metal. In fact, it hit the guy who was next to me. So I slipped over or rolled over and grabbed the door away from where the bullets were coming from. And the guy took the left turn. And then the bullets started flying. There were people in the vehicle with me. The pin score. But you know something? I believe the soldiers decided they are not going to kill their colleagues. Otherwise, they would have fired up instead of firing down
Right.
and knocking off the tires, etc. Yeah. Just like happened to me when I had the jet aircraft and etc. that day. Interesting.
So June 4, what happened? Where were you, and who broke in and took you out?
Yeah. I remember there were about 3 soldiers, who came in and broke into the BNI place. And they tried several rounds into the padlock. I was behind the bars.
Where were you exactly?
In a cell.
In a cell in Birmingham.
No. In that place with the high walls near the Constance place.
Ah,
Yes. Till finally, they were able to break it open with a few shots. And, the bullets were just ricocheting around me. How I wasn't hit by that thing, I will never understand. Anyway, so we broke it and we got out of the place. When I'm telling you, in a state of anger, people can be so destructive. The poor policeman who was just keeping guard over me outside. They were going to mow him down. And I had to tell them, no, please. He was doing his job. Let's go. You know, by that time, I think one of them had left. And the vehicle had also left. So we had to run from, through the gates, down that road, by which time it was almost daylight, all the way down to the ring road, cross the ring road into the broadcasting area.
So this place, that is near 37, correct?
No, it's not.
No.
That's a different one.
Right. So this is Ridge.
This is near Ridge.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So into the broadcasting, and I recall seeing this soldier whose gate was widely open and manning a machine gun. Our eyes met and he did this. So I knew it was a friendly force. Yeah. It turned out that, I didn't even know, it turned out we had spoken one night at the airport when he was on duty. And he had noted it in his head. The point is, nobody didn't see why something wasn't happening.
Right.
And if we didn't hurry up, as I kept saying, the subordinates will take it. And they will do us in so badly.
Who extracted you from the cell?
Nobody extracted anybody. Because I was still on my feet. Those two guys, when they were firing at the padlock, till finally it broke. There's no time to extract anybody. So we opened the door.
Do you remember the individuals?
One of them both of them became my bodyguards. Yeah. One was a very short guy. The other one, Sabadu, yeah, he was with a mortar regiment. He died not too long ago,
And then you went to GBC.
Yes.
And you had your speech, or somebody gave a speech?
No, there was no speech.
You spoke from the heart.
Yes.
Do you recall what you said?
Maybe if you played it to me, I'll say yes. That's it. But I needed to warn the officers not to provoke the situation. A bad government. We'll get rid of a bad government. But in terms of taking power, my mind was nowhere near that. Maybe it's something we should talk more about.
So your objective was not really to,
Yeah.
to take power as such.
Yeah.
Is that
I don't know what to do with it. Kobe Usha. I didn't know what to do with it, honest. And I had in mind those who I thought, yes, were good enough. Go on the broadcasting. The names I called. They're not even my fellow, Bishop Sapong, this, that, etc. Yes. These were people. In Bishop Sapong's case, I hadn't met him, but I read something he had written not too long before this thing happened. And I just kept it in my mind that that's the kind of person we need. The person who respects the libation we pour, sees the God in the earth, etc., etc. And not the way the white man just presents it to us. I mean, that's why, in a way, we didn't hesitate when Father Damwa, who was of a like mind, decided to join.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, Chief.
Thank you for sharing your story with me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Chief.
Thanks. And thank you for tuning in. My name is Kwaku Sakyi Addo. This has been Sunday Night on Asasi Radio 99.5.